Mark Pollard from Corporate Traveller. Please come up, Mark. Mark's the National Sales Manager for Corporate Traveller. I'm really impressed with some of the things you guys have done, so I'm looking forward to hearing more about it today. And Tony Hughes, most of you will know Tony. Looking forward to the two of you really helping us understand how to sell more with less.
Welcome everybody this morning. It was about, I think 4 months ago, I was a keynote speaker at a large sales conference. We had about 500 people in the audience when this shot was taken. But I was actually asked to get one of my customers up on stage, someone that was a really good example of how they'd use technology well to actually drive a far greater level of efficiency in the way that they sell. Now, I get asked that often because at conferences people don't want to hear some talking head, jacked up wannabe, self-proclaimed expert banging on about how they think you should do things. They want to hear from people in the real world that have solved the same problems that are faced by the people in the audience. And in previous years, I've always struggled to think, I struggled to think of an organisation out there that, for example, that's using this CRM system really well, or that's using social really well to go and build pipeline. But I instantly really thought of Mark and what they've achieved in Corporate Traveller. And you can see some points on that slide. Mark's going to talk about his own journey in a moment when he walked into a situation where he inherited a large number. I know for myself, when I became sales director of a public company in Australia, you know, you walk in and you get given this giant number, which is what Mark experienced, and you're expected to work miracles pretty quickly. But in essence, what Mark had was a situation where he had 50% turnover in his own sales force. And the reason the talk today is so important is we need to deliver results and solve these problems. He and his team got that down to 20% turnover. They managed to achieve a stretch goal and aggressive target, but do it with 23% less people. And he put more than $500,000 on the bottom line of the P&L of that organisation. So really spectacular results. So with that, what I'd love to do, Mark, is maybe you just share with the audience your own leadership journey and how you ended up leading a large sales organisation, and then we can talk about the challenges in the travel industry and then also a little bit about Corporate Traveller.
I've been in Corporate Traveller now for for almost 3 years, which has been fantastic. And here we are, you know, talking about Corporate Traveller.
And the industry is ferociously competitive, right? I know the internet heralded the end of travel agents, which hasn't happened at all. But it's a competitive market. What are the sort of challenges you face in trying to succeed?
Yeah, so in terms of the role itself, what we're trying to do is really work with organisations to be able to simplify their travel requirements, and it's a real end-to-end solution that we're providing with them. Often, you know, our biggest challenge is some of the people that we're talking to don't even really realise that they can see benefit in what it is that we're offering and we've got out there in the marketplace. So, big part of the conversation is that. There's also this other larger part of another part of the pie, which is where we're working with organisations that, you know, really don't understand the complexities of what it is that, you know, travel is all about, and with all of the technology that's now part of, I guess, that's in the mix. It's more than just a transaction. It's actually about a whole end-to-end solution. So it's very much working on that level.
Okay, and just sort of 20 seconds on Corporate Traveller, what are the dimensions of the business?
Yeah, so Corporate Traveller is one of the corporate arms of the Flight Centre Travel Group. So we really work with, again, that corporate organisation that's really looking to simplify their travel requirements from that, you know, booking, pre-booking to booking, and then also the reconciliation process as well. So it's a real overview of what it is that is travel.
Great. So when you took over that role 3.5 years ago, you inherited a big number, and there were two things they were using to try and drive growth. Yeah, the assumption that every rep just equals more revenue, and then if you throw technology at people, you're enabling them. What was your experience sort of walking in, and what did you find was the problem behind that?
I think the initial problem was really
Got that next one. Yeah.
It was really about the employee churn. So we had a number of people that were coming into the business that, you know, we're really focusing on that first part of the journey, which was that novice. So we found that all of what we were doing in terms of our learning and development was really focusing on the novice to be able to get up to speed. And then, you know, from there, we were forgetting about our 2 and 3 year BDMs that actually, when you look at it, have the best opportunity and are winning the most opportunities as a result of what it is that they need to do. So there was a real misalignment. We really needed to make sure that we were focusing on more opportunities around getting that BDM to stick around longer. It was mentioned earlier that the average tenure for a BDM coming into the business was around 18 months, but our opportunity really was, and the challenge that I had was that I was walking into a situation where if we employed more BDMs, we'd be able to get a better result. But you can see here, basically these lines are the tenure. So we've got 6 month, 1 year, 2 years, and 3 year plus, with the results as a result of how long they've been around. So if we were continually focusing on 50% of our team around this space, we know that they weren't really delivering what it is that we needed them to deliver. But if we could continue to increase that, we had a better opportunity to be able to get more revenue and more results as a result of focusing on those individuals up there. So we needed to change the strategy.
And Mark, you had high sales employee turnover. Was that mainly the new people were turning over a lot, or the more senior people were churning out?
It was mostly the new BDMs. So we would sort of see them, and they would come along, and they would drop off around that 12-month mark and into the 12 to 14 months as well. So we really needed to change the strategy, and we needed to make sure that we were looking at what that problem was and find out what that problem was as well.
And you mentioned previously that there was a misalignment with learning and development with what the business needed. So the way they were onboarded was an issue?
Yeah, so basically whilst we had all of this learning and development around our novices, we, when people came on, like what was mentioned earlier, it's like you need to go out there and create your own pipeline. So we're not going to give you your pipeline. You need to literally go out there and find your own leads and develop. So part of what that was is, we would give people access to systems, and all of that sort of stuff was great, but then we would just, throw them out there. We would, put them in with a leader where there was misalignment. So we needed to really, find out what we could do to be able to improve that. So we needed to come up with a more structured opportunity to be able to give them the support so that they wanted to stick around. And one of the big changes that we did in that space was, we've got a structure where we've got a state sales leader and then a number of small teams. And rather than throw the novice BDMs in with a team where the team leader was really struggling, we've got our state sales leader that was really responsible for the training and development of that individual, get them up to a certain speed, but then also give them an opportunity to be able to work with all of the teams around the business and find that fit where the BDM felt most comfortable with a certain leader to be able to get the most out of them, from an individual basis, but also, for the team leader to be aligned to that individual as well. So it was very much a personality matching that went on as well.
Okay, so obviously onboarding's important, but I guess recruiting the right people that are a good fit. So this is again from your internal slide deck.
Yeah.
Do you want to maybe talk through that?
Yeah. So when we went through our recruitment profiling, what we did is we've got this psychometric testing, and I'm sure, I don't know, how many people in the room put their staff through psychometric testing when they start? So a few in the room. It's very much a flight centre thing that we do with recruiting our teams. And what we did is we did the analysis based on novices, based on 1 year, 2 year, and 3 year BDMs. So we did it across all of our top performers to find out what are the traits within those individuals that give them the biggest success. And the results were really interesting. And so we needed to have something to be able to base our plan on, and this is what we came up with. So we found that drive and motivation was a really key and important thing, and that sales persuasion and influence and confidence was really important as well. Intelligence is pretty straightforward, but then also a level of optimism, because we also know that in sales you need to have that real optimistic, I can get this done approach to things, and we found that was absolutely key. What was also really interesting is that we had a real clear indicator that leadership ability was something that which stood out. So we needed to make sure, because we also had an interesting conundrum where we had BDMs that would come in and they would look to become a strong performer in terms of their development and be a great BDM, but then what else? What else could they do? we had this great leadership pathway. So naturally, all of our BDMs just went towards and gravitated towards wanting to become a leader because that was the next thing that was available to them. What we then found is, as a part of our strategy, there was a real big gap because actually what we really wanted was great BDMs. We wanted shit hot BDMs that were going to go out there and smash the market and win lots of business.
And stay.
So what could we do around that? So we absolutely needed to form a strategy to be able to do that. Other, areas where the cultural fit and the expectations around KPIs and commissions were certainly important as well, which was natural in a sales environment.
Okay, so we've got no chance of doing more with less if we're churning salespeople. We'd all agree with that, yeah? So I see a lot of businesses trying to grow, but they're churning customers out the back end and trying to recruit more customers to solve that problem. So customer experience is really important to grow compound revenue with clients. Attracting and retaining the best salespeople, you can't have employee churn and do more with less. So again, I guess the next piece, and we'll frame this into a discussion at the tables, is once you've got the right people, you're onboarding them well, you need to drive the right behaviours. So I guess there's that question of what is it that you really measure inside the business. A lot of sales managers make the mistake of trying to manage by results, but there is no revenue lever to pull. There's just activities that we can really manage, right? So the activities that feed into our sales objectives that create results. So talk through the lead versus lag indicator approach you've got.
Yeah, so we've made a really big mistake of just focusing on the target or the number. And so, we had this number that, every BDM needed to, on average, win, let's say, $5 million worth of business and bring that business into the group. And if we just kept focusing on that, then it all just became about that number. So what we saw is what we call our stick rate, the business that actually results and transacts after the business has come on board, went from about 85%, so a really good, strong number, to about 55, 60. And so, there was a instant correlation to just focusing on wins versus what was the ultimate aim, and that is, the business is actually going to transact. So what we've done and what we're starting to do, and we're migrating this, is making sure that we've got a holistic approach of all of the KPIs. So we're looking at focusing on, and our biggest opportunity as an organisation is just really getting more first appointments. Because what we've found is we've found that the complexity of the sale, even in the travel space, is getting even harder. There's so many different elements, into this. Back in the day, say 25 years ago when we started Corporate Traveller, it's our 25th anniversary this year. You could go out, basically, you could use the yellow pages. You could call someone up and say, "Hey, have I got a deal for you?" and get them up and trading, straight away. It was literally that simple. As it's become more complex, we've needed to make sure that we are finding the balance between the sales process and getting someone on board, but also making sure that we can continue to focus on the stuff at the top, which is making sure that we're putting more in the pipeline as we go through that process. So there's a real absolute balance between finding that right measurement. But what we need to do is make sure that we're talking about the appointments, we're talking about the activity levels, we're talking about LinkedIn measurements. We're talking about all of the different things that are measurable, to be able to make sure that that's there, but then also measuring the end result, which is ultimately what business is transacting at the end. We talk about that being our TTV.
Okay, rather than just focusing on revenue. So, okay. Look, that really takes us to our first little table discussion that we'd like you to have. So I really want you to think about this question and discuss it at your table. So beyond revenue, how do you measure success? What are your top 3 KPIs? But also, how do you hold people accountable? So we all know that what gets measured and what gets reported and then what gets actually recognised is typically what gets done. So what are those input lead indicators that you think will contribute to revenue that are best to focus on inside your business? We can't have too many things that we're trying to focus on. So, the art of simplification is really important in effectively managing a sales team. So we've got 5 minutes. So just off to you at your table group to talk about what do you think are the good lead indicator KPIs that you should focus on in creating a high performance sales team. 5 minutes, off you go. Okay, so I hope you found that conversation quite interesting. Who from any of the tables would like to share some of the key KPIs that you thought were important?
Cheers.
So the main three that we had at this table was obviously the activity that each BDM is doing, the amount that they have in their pipeline, and the appointments that they're setting. And we had it slightly different on a monthly, one of us had a weekly basis, but they're the three KPIs that we're looking at in order to achieve the target.
Great, okay. I really like that comment about focusing on customer success. I believe creating great customer experience is the best sales engine that any business can really build. That's how you prevent customer churn. It's how you get your customers becoming advocates. Because the thing that we know is that the fastest path to revenue is through monitoring trigger events in the marketplace. So monitoring happy customers going into other organisations. I know Mark focuses on following those into the new companies they work for because we've got an advocate for us. But also customers can give us referrals, and that begins a conversation with trust. But they're actually our best sales force. They're very credible. And increasingly today, potential new clients are doing their research online before we try and manage the reference site process. They're just doing their own thing much earlier in the process. So yeah, really important to focus on customer success as a lead indicator KPI. Let's talk about, Mark, reward and recognition. You know, that's tough in your industry. You know, you don't pay people like the software industry pays people. So people will stay if they're really enjoying their job and they're feeling they're being successful. Yeah, but I've just got a slide here with some of the key things that you typically focus on with how you reward and recognise people, and this will feed into the next conversation for the tables.
Yeah. So what we did is we utilised some really cool, funky software actually that integrated with our CRM, and what it did is it created a series of leaderboards across the country. We've got multiple teams across the country. Currently the team at the time was around 80 that we had, and various different teams, and we needed to, I guess, create an element of competition where we were posting the results on these television screens that we're pulling straight from our CRM, and creating this level of engagement that we were really lacking. There was a real lack of, I guess, team spirit, but also individual achievement. So across our business, though, in the Flight Centre travel group model, there's very much this reward and recognition element as a part of our culture. So each month we have this rewards night, which is called a buzz night. So it's essentially across all of the business where all of our teams get together, and it's really about really identifying and rewarding individual achievements, but also team achievements. And as a BDM, when you're growing, particularly as a novice, there's lots of little, I guess, milestones that you achieve along the way, and to be able to talk about those and really celebrate those personal bests is really important in front of your colleagues and in front of your peers. So we really enjoy that, and at the same time, each month we get together and we like to have a bit of a good time as well. But the big focus is really about that individual and team achievement. And then we also, as a part of the Flight Centre Travel Group, we have what's called our global gathering. So once a year we get together in an amazing location around the world, and our top, typically it's around our top 10 achievers across the business, across all areas of the business, will get to go to this amazing location. So you need to have it's our top 10 in the business. So you can imagine in a very competitive environment, there's a lot of people that really want to go to this great place. So the targets are really high. And we have levels set for our novices and our various different levels of tenure. And this year, for example, we're going to, for those that achieve, we'll be going to Berlin. And so there's going to be about 3,500 people from around the globe going to Berlin next month, which I'm really looking forward to hopefully going if I achieve my target. But I really feel for Berlin because 3,500 Flight Centre people is going to be an interesting party, that's for sure. Previously it's been in other locations like Singapore and Cancun and Vegas and the like, so in Paris. So it's a great place to look forward to going, and it's very much about driving that conversation and those really having that belief that you can get there and what it is that you need to be able to get there as well. So it's very much about that reward and recognition element of our business.
And just tell us a little bit about the thinking internally, because structuring a comp plan with hard dollars is relatively straightforward. Designing incentives that motivate that are soft are often trickier. So what sort of portion of the at-risk component do you just have a straight commission versus the other things in the mix?
Yeah, so I mean, very much our model is, you know, a base, and it's quite a low base for the BDMs in the team. But, you know, we have, you know, we'll have an uncapped commission structure for the more business that you win, the more opportunity that you have, and the harder that you work, the more you'll be rewarded. And it's really about making sure that, you know, we identify what that reverse engineering is. So often what we'll do with a new person that starts in the business is talk about what it is they want to achieve, what's their salary that they want to, ultimately, what do they need to survive, and what is it that they want out of this job to be able to, you know, keep them satisfied. And so we reverse engineer the numbers so that we talk about this formula that we have. And if they do a certain amount of, you know, cold calls, and then they go to a certain amount of appointments and they convert at a certain level, then it will, at this margin, you know, convert through to, you know, ultimately their commission or transfer, as we call it, at the end of the month. So, you know, we really have that conversation. We talk about that on, you know, on an individual basis and also on a wider part of the business to be able to drive the right behaviours and really motivate them at that level as well.
Okay, and you really recognise them for the right activity levels at the front end.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Okay, great.
The other thing is, you know, we do have some great team rewards as well. Richard's in the audience today, and I'll in one of my team, and you know, he's the state sales leader for New South Wales. And Richard came up with this great idea to be able to drive activity, and he had a mate that's got a really cool boat on the harbour in Sydney, and incidentally, it's called the Sex Panther. And Richard, you know, thought, what a great idea to be able to reward the team if we all hit our numbers and we all, you know, really get to, you know, what it is that we need to achieve. I'll shout them out, you know, for a day on the harbour. And just by going there and doing that, but not just having, you know, loose targets, having really, you know, stretch targets that were going to ultimately get what it is that we needed to achieve, the whole team just really got on board, and everybody's going, am I going to get onto the Sex Panther? Which was a really good, you know, conversation and a really good motivator for the team as well.
Great. Okay, well that leads into the next conversation. So what I'd like you to talk about here is, with reward and recognition, beyond comp plans, how do you really motivate people inside your team? So we'll just take 5 minutes to do that. If you can run that as a table conversation. 5 minutes, off you go. Is there someone that would just like to share what you discussed about how to really motivate people beyond comp plans?
Good morning, everybody. So at our table, if I can read my own writing, is we had quite a few that have an actual point score system, and the points are rewarded against a number of parameters, including obviously achievement of targets, but also quality of the pipeline and the velocity. But we had quite a bit of a talk about peer recognition for living the values in the organisation, and offering mentoring to the people that either need it or deserve it, both. Attending conferences, and we had one that I really like the idea of. It's a multinational company, and they offer their performers to actually go on retreats where they can meet other people of either peers or more senior people from other countries, and learn and study with them. So it's like a corporate retreat where they can talk and mingle and learn from each other. It's really motivating.
Wow, I like that. How about somebody else? Another table?
Can I just suggest Daniel, who dominated the conversation, because he had someone to just give us a quick heads up.
Yeah, so, you know, I spoke to the guys here. We're from a US tech company, so obviously fairly famous for rewards and recognition and the things that we do. So there was a number of different things. We run competitions outside of compensation. So in the past, we've done things like give away a Range Rover. There's an electric motorbike one going on at the moment. We do the retreats. I think that probably came from us as well. So we do a President's Club type event. The barrier to entry, I think, is probably relatively low there for our guys, so we're quite lucky with that. And then we do more recognition but non-monetary things. So we do things like everyone that hits their target for a month, we take them for a pancake breakfast. And people work so hard for that just to get onto it, just so that they can say they're going to it. And then they hit their quota, we take them on a dinner. We have an internal point system as well, but it's, you know, we can give discretionary points out to our reps where they can go online and buy, you know, TVs, or, you know, I think one guy bought a dishwasher once. Like, it's just crazy stuff that people can get on this online portal. And then we do a mixture of other spiffs and kind of short-term incentives as well. So a real mixed bag.
And it's amazing how those things motivate people more than just a commission plan. So excellent. Okay, we'll move on if that's okay. What I want to talk about now is what I regard as the most valuable part of today. I think having a healthy culture inside an organisation is incredibly important. I think all of us, if we're hiring managers, know that the biggest mistake that we can make and the greatest area of risk in our role is hiring the wrong person into the organisation. Because if you've got a person carrying, say, a $2 million quota, a sales target, we hire the wrong person, we're going to probably miss out on $1 million of revenue. We've got to ramp somebody new up. They damage the brand of the company. They damage our own brand as a manager and hiring people. They chew up lots of our cycle time, and there's a big opportunity cost. So culture is incredibly important. Hiring for cultural fit was what Mark talked about a little bit earlier. But what I'd love Mark to talk about is how does he really create a high-performance sales culture in a business that's highly transactional, and you're not attracting people based on massive salaries. It's all based on them loving working in the environment.
Yeah, so what we really needed to identify is, looking at people coming into our business that really wanted to succeed, and what their success was, really was up to them as an individual. So what we really needed to identify was what that was, and a big part of what we call that is around their brightness of future, and that again is a big Flight Centre Travel Group philosophy. And a big part of what we did was create this opportunity for them to be able to identify what that is, what it looks like for them, and then being able to create a plan so that they have an opportunity to be able to take ownership of that and execute that throughout their actual role. So not just about making sure that they have all of the tools and the things that they need to be able to do their job, but also invest in them in identifying ultimately what the end game is at the end of the day.
And you focused a lot on simplification for people, right, to try and give them time back and help them. I might just show the room this. This is actually an example of what Mark's team did. Mark's worked hard to create alignment with marketing and sales. So the marketing team helped the organisation really identify the buyer personas. So do you want to talk through those 3 buyer personas? This is the manager one. This is designed to make it easy for them to go and engage and understand their world, yeah?
So we've got the manager, we've got the booker, and we've got the traveller. So we've got the 3 personas that we're basically tailoring our conversations to. And what we did, all of this information actually came from our own trading customers. So we went out and surveyed all of our customers. We gave them an opportunity. We got quite a lot of feedback. We got over 2,500 responses. We've got over 6,000 trading customers, which is great. And we have effectively segmented it so that we could identify what it was and what was important to them, so that essentially all of our future marketing plans were all based off exactly what our customers want. So we've recently gone through an entire rebranding. So on some of the slides you would have seen these cartoon figures, and we used to be famous for this guy with the giant thumbs. Now we've actually totally changed that and made it all about our people. So any of the actual collateral that we have out there is all about our people out there. So we recently did a campaign which showcased all of our travel managers. The person that actually does all of the bookings and the person that you work with is the person that's up there on the billboard. So it was a really big change that we put across our entire marketing space. But this really did give us an opportunity to be able to tailor all of our conversations so that we now know what it is that the manager wants. So we'll develop a sales narrative or a value-led narrative that totally hits the mark in terms of what it is that the manager wants and what they see the value to be.
And we've actually got John Dean in the room today. Where's John sitting up there? So I remember John Dean, I heard John Dean speak years ago, and in his talk he said to the audience, I dare you to go and see a customer and not talk about yourself, your product, your service or your solution. That was basically the idea. And that to me is a great example of this. This is all about the customer in their role and their world and their KPIs, the things that drive them. It's not about us and our product. So it helped them have empathy for their role, yeah?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. And there was another thing I saw inside your organisation that really blew me away, and it'll sound all very contradictory, but you work with marketing to create a PowerPoint deck with how many slides? This is it up here.
I think we're actually about to, with version 7, about to hit over 200 slides.
Now, now we all know that there's a very special corner of hell for people who use PowerPoint, right, and inflict it on other people. But this is very clever, right? So, because you found your people were wasting a lot of time creating their own slides, reinventing the wheel, lots of prep. You want to give them time back and create a better experience for customers. So what's unique about this PowerPoint deck?
So this actual deck, and sorry, this is Nicole, one of our travel managers down in Melbourne, the beautiful Nicole. So our new branding, but basically this is a navigational landing page, so we call it the main switch. So essentially we've got all of our key messages that we want up there for a customer to see. So in a one-on-one environment or even in a board style presentation, it talks about our key messages. But what you can do is you can hover over any parts of this wheel and you can click on it and it will take you through to that section. So it's totally hyperlinked with all of those slides. So there's literally thousands of hyperlinks in here. So you can have a conversation and talk to, our guarantee to you will take you through to a mini switch, which will then have a whole series of elements in there. You can then click on any of those elements and it'll take you through to that next bit. So at the bottom of each of the slides, there's a hyperlink to take you back to home, to here. So you just click on the logo, it'll take you back to the main page, or it'll take you back to the sub-switch. So there's another page here. What you can also do, and for those that know PowerPoint really well, you can also do shortcuts. So you can do the slide number and Alt and Enter, and it'll take you straight through to that slide as well. So what we've also been able to do with this is being able to tailor presentations. If you know exactly what it is that you want to be able to have a conversation with the customer about, it'll take you straight to that slide in the sequence that you decide, rather than again having to create a whole linear deck, which then takes you through, page by page by page by page. So the great thing about this is that the BDM team now don't need to create any sort of PowerPoint presentation, but they can also have a conversation. They can literally have a conversation to any customer and take them to the areas that they know are going to reinforce the things that they've been discussing in the meeting.
Yeah, so it's really a PowerPoint deck that works like a website, and you encourage people not to start with our company, right? You really start with
you would never go around in a circle. You would have a conversation, and sometimes, it's just there for you to have a conversation to be able to support something if you need it. There's often conversations you have with a customer that you don't even need to bring that out because it may not be at that stage. But what's great about this is that it's there. We can also do our tech demos and launch it from here. So you now no longer need to just type something in your URL
browser
to be able to take you there. You can now launch it through our branded, device.
Great. So a culture of high performance really equip people. You got L&D alignment, learning and development alignment, marketing alignment. Talk us through this one. We saw this earlier, but specifically here about this whole thing of brightness of future for people.
Yeah, so brightness of future, again, as to what I was talking about earlier, is about understanding what it is that drives and motivates that individual. So what is it that's there? What is it that's their end game? So part of our whole recruitment process, and my favourite question is, what's your ultimate end game, and how is this role going to help you get there? And I talk about, it not being a 5-year plan, about ultimately where do they want to go. And what we do with that is we're able to map out a plan that individual can take ownership of, and we really encourage and support everything that we need to be able to do to be able to get that person to the actual ultimate end game and goal that they want to get to.
So one of the things I've taken away from today and in understanding Mark's organisation is they've moved away from a focus on them as their own company achieving the company's number to instead focusing on your salespeople and helping them be successful. Yeah. So you've got a lot more people being successful, and you've got a culture of helping them completely focus on their customer, not on them making their sale. Yeah. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely. We had this real challenge where we were focusing on the novices because that's where we were having our churn. If we just focus on the novices, we get that right, then it'll be okay. But what we forgot was the opportunity that we had with those 1, 2, and 3 year BDMs, because ultimately, whilst the success for them was the financial reward, because if they stay longer, they will earn more and they will be more successful. But we had this disconnect between our opportunity for those BDMs being high performers, but also wanting the only option was really to chase this development pathway, which was towards the manager and to being a manager. So we needed to fill that gap, and we needed to start to invest back into the individuals. And that's why we started to use, and we have, started to use external resources. We've got great learning and development within our own business, which is fantastic, and I truly believe it's market leading. But what we needed is, we went out to our team and found out how many of our sales team had actually gone through any formal training outside of our own organisation, and it was a very small percentage. So what we did is we started to change the conversation, and we came up with this integrated plan with our own learning and development team to be able to come up with a really strategic plan to be able to grow and develop our individuals and really upskill them for their ability to be able to know, just by changing the conversation and having this external influence and changing our sales language, gave us this opportunity to be able to really show that we were turning the conversation around from being just the number and being about their development and their opportunity and their growth within our business, and it had a really big change within our organisation.
Awesome. So let's go to our last conversation at the tables this morning. So what I'd like you to think about here is what are the elements of a high-performance culture, and then how do you instill that within your teams? So 5 minutes, if you can have that as a table conversation, and if someone could maybe be prepared to share some good things that come out of that conversation with the room. Okay, who'd like to share what they really think defines a high-performance culture and how they really embed it inside their organisation? Up down here, thank you. We'll just get you a mic. Thank you. Thanks, Gabrielle.
So at Corporate Traveller, we have like a really high focus on collaboration, referrals between the different departments. We have a focus on doing AM planners early in the weeks on a Monday morning, and then checking in through the week, having a weekly business meeting at the end of the week. So that's all the individual teams getting together and sort of strategizing and planning on how they can work together to drive the results that we're aiming for, and that would equate to our monthly, quarterly or annual goals.
Excellent, fantastic. Somebody else?
So we had quite a bit of consensus at this table, talking about obviously the reward and recognition for the individual, but also how is it linked to the vision of the organisation, and how can we align the vision of the organisation with the individual's goals and aims and aspirations, and if we can align those, then we create a high-performing culture.
I really agree with that. Let me just share a couple of things I've observed when it comes to culture, and the first is, and I know Ian speaks a lot about this, with having a strong sense of why in what we do in the marketplace, so a strong sense of purpose. Selling has always been about, and should continue to be about, helping a customer achieve a far better state of affairs in their personal life and business. That's to me what selling is all about. And if we've got a culture of service where the leaders are serving their salespeople who are serving customers and helping them go achieve a far better state of affairs, that's really the first thing. And the second thing is that culture is nothing more and nothing less than the behaviour of the leaders inside an organisation. So actually this morning at 11 a.m. I've got a meeting with a CEO of a financial institution here in Sydney who I did some work with last year, a guy called Daniel Blizzard, and he actually sits on the sales floor in his organisation. He doesn't have the corner office, with all the glass walls and the beautiful view. He sits out there in the workstation area with the salespeople. They can hear him on the phone trying to get appointments and failing. He goes out and does sales calls, so he does what he expects others to do, so he leads by example. So I think that's really important inside our own organisation. So just to wrap up this morning, this is actually, I think, Mark's final slide in his internal presentation to the executive team on the goal. He's actually hidden what the number was. It's hundreds of millions of dollars, right, is the target. So it's certainly a serious number. But do you just want to sort of summarise how you go and drive high performance?
So this was the end of the presentation that we put together for once we'd understood what the problem was and what all the strategies were that we were going to put into place to be able to execute this. And we created really, these main pillars to be able to drive the success. And this really did become that vision that was shared within the entire business. So the point earlier was really just making sure that everybody knew what this was and that everybody had bought into it as well. So it was important that we didn't just come up with something that was going to sit there and gather dust. We really did make this part of the living and breathing of what it was, the foundation of what the plan was that we needed to be able to execute. So developing and driving our people was the really key number one pillar. And to this day, this plan was developed 2.5 years ago. And right now, we still have the number one pillar of our success plan for this coming year, all about maximising sales potential and our people. So that really remains a continual throughout our whole plan. Focusing on our right customer, we had this challenge within our business across the Flight Centre Travel Group where we have a large market share. It's known that we have about a 30% market share in our space. So 1 in 3 people travelling on a flight is going to be booked through our services, which is a pretty big number. So we've got a big competition with our own team. So we needed to make sure that we were focusing on that right customer. So we've really worked with our marketing and our entire business to be able to focus on that. Make sure that we've had really strategic lead generation. So, back to the beginning where I was talking about making sure that we're putting more in the top, we really needed to make sure that we weren't just relying upon our CRM tool to get leads and that, someone had held on to something within their pipeline for a period of time and then, just because they've been around the longest that they have, the best opportunity to be able to win that business. So we really needed to be more clever around that and make sure that we shift that business around, and that we're also looking at other ways to be able to generate business as well. So looking, using technology like LinkedIn Sales Navigator, and then also, doing the basics like going out there and being strategic around our networking and who we're aligning ourselves with, and actually getting out there and talking to people that are coming across the multiple different industries that we do have as our customer base. Be really clear and focused around our pipeline development again, so making sure that we're having the conversations, that we're taking we're going through the journey, that we're having the conversations with the team to be able to make sure that we're progressing the stages of the pipeline. It would be, we would walk in, back 2.5, almost 3 years ago, we would have conversations with the team. It's like, what are you going to win? What are you going to actually win this month? And it's like, I don't really know. Don't know what I'm going to win. I think I'll be able to win this, and I'll be able to win this. And then ultimately at the end, when we had the final review, it's like, well, I only really won this one because this one's decided to, I guess it'll happen next month. I promise you it'll happen next month. And we were having really loose conversations. But now we're having very strategic conversations around, what business over a 3-month view is going to close. What stage is that out? What can we do to be able to work together to be able to close that business? And what strategies can we be able to put in place to be able to give us the best opportunity as a business to win that business as well? So we've really moved across, to make sure that we've got a bigger view, and really having that 3-month view is helping us.
And Mark, can I just jump in on that? And I believe you also focus on making sure the customer's going to be onboarded well and transact solidly, rather than we just won the deal, now moving on.
Correct, yeah. So we've got a really strong, and we've worked a lot in the space of the onboarding with the customer and making sure that they were getting everything that was promised to them, and that we had a lot of support to be able to do that, and to make it easier as well. We've recently just introduced a new offering into the marketplace, which will be able to have a customer on board pretty much after that actual conversation. Within half an hour, they could be up and trading, which is our perfect customer. But then there's back to that complexity. We need to move away from all of those things that make it really complex to be able to get the customer on board, which is impacting our ability to win new business, because we're just focusing on these larger customers, which are sucking our time, which isn't where we want to be. And then the stronger marketing and partnerships focus. So we really did have a very clear strategy around what it is and driving marketing. So previously we would just rely upon what marketing would give us, and we would get a very small amount coming in from a referral basis. But now we're really partnered together. We've got a common goal. We're really sharing and being strategic. We've recently had a campaign in the marketplace where we're literally targeting people in our pipelines, where we're placing business, the advertising out there. And so we'll have information. We'll have our advertising in our prospects lists, so that when they see that, they'll have a conversation with a cold call from one of our team, and then they'll realise, but I've just seen that in my lift. There's a little bit more recognition, and in the car parks and in billboards and where people are travelling as well. So there's very much a clear strategy when it comes to that alignment with the marketing team as well.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much. John, I'll hand over to you. That slides up.
Well, thank you very much to both Tony and Mark. I really appreciate it, everybody.